there's got to be a better way of doing this.
This week on Click, we're copying and printing ourselves at a rapid prototyping lab in London. And we ask if creating objects from scratch in our own homes could soon be as easy as downloading the design. The net feeding your TV set. We're in France, one of the countries that's leading the next living room revolution. But will it catch on elsewhere? We'll also sum up the week's biggest tech news stories from around the world and ask if this website can really tell you how important you are. Welcome to Click. I'm Spencer Kelly. You join me at a very interesting point. I'm having my head scanned so that it can be duplicated. Not so the BBC has a spare in case of any accidents, but because my head is going to be reproduced by that machine over there, a 3D printer. 3D printing is essentially exactly what it sounds like, producing a 3D object by printing it layer by layer. And it's now catching on with those who need to create 3D models quickly and cheaply. Designers who need to test the look and feel of their prototypes and concept devices in the real world. Artists wanting to bring outrageous designs to life. And architects who need to create precision scale models of their building plans. There's even talk that in the future, buildings themselves will be printed section by section. And recently, the technology has become cheap enough to go mainstream. You can design your own models online and then get them printed, packaged and posted straight to you. It's even possible to print in colour. The machines aren't so different to traditional inkjet printers, except that instead of flat layers of ink, these nozzles dispense thin layers of plastic, resin or even food, one on top of the other until your work of art is complete. The process starts with the scan and the scanner. Here it is. What you have are two lenses at the top, which are taking tens of photos every second. And down the bottom, you have a projector, which is projecting a grid onto the subject. So I'll show you what it looks like on the screen. And the grid is collecting geometric data, so 3D data about the subject that's being scanned. All that data is then fed into this piece of software, which essentially stitches all of those photos together. It uses the geometric data to form the 3D model of my head, which you can see on the screen here. Now, it does need the human touch, hence Jake is here. He's going to tidy up all the extra bits of noise, the random dots that have crept into the scan, and also fill in a hole in my face, which we found. Once he's done that, he adds the texture and the colour back onto the head, presses go, and it sends all that information to the print station. Now, at this point, you have a choice of three different types of 3D printer. This one here is using a kind of powder substance. If you look in there, you can see the powder, and you can also see what looks like an inkjet printer head. That is because that's exactly what it is. It's using a normal inkjet printer head to pump coloured glue into the powder, but only where it needs to set that particular cross-section. Then once that layer's done, the whole bed of powder drops down, more powder's added, and then just the bit for the next cross-section is pumped in and set. This is the kind of thing that this powder 3D printer will produce. Now, next up, round here, we've got something that looks a little bit more like a microwave oven. And that's because essentially it does get very hot in there. This is a 3D printer that's using resin. And you can see inside again, it's building up the head layer by layer. And this is the kind of thing that this printer will produce. This is some kind of stadium or other, and this kind of printing is useful for producing injection moulded stuff and also snap fix kits, things that you'll put together afterwards. You'll pop the different parts out and glue them together yourself. Now this is possibly the weirdest printer in my mind because it's actually using paper. It's got a big ream of A4 white paper there, and what it does is load the paper sheet by sheet onto this bed, glue it to the previous sheet of paper, and then a fine blade cuts out just the top layer into the shape of the cross section you need. Then the whole bed lowers down and more paper is added, and you can get some really bizarre creations like this one, which is made of paper, but there is no other way of coming up with something like this if you're just making it out of paper. Now, the data that we saw that makes up my head is sent to the computer attached to each of these printers, and each one will process it in a different way because of the way it's printed. The powder printer, for example, only needs the model to be broken up into cross sections, whereas the resin printer needs extra information in there. It needs to work out where to put support struts to keep the thing in the right shape before the resin has set in the heat. OK, more on 3D printing in a minute, and we should see the final result before we finish the programme. But next, it's this week's tech news. The hacking group Anonymous has started to release secret documents stolen from an Italian cybercrime unit. The files were allegedly taken from the department which oversees Italy's critical IT infrastructure. The attack is thought to be in retaliation for arrests of Italian members of Anonymous. The group is now threatening further attacks against online giants PayPal and eBay. A new mobile phone operating system is being developed by the open source not-for-profit team that brought us the Firefox web browser. Mozilla's Boot2Gecko will use the web to host applications rather than the device itself, a bit like Google's new Chrome OS for computers. The company wants to, quote, break the stranglehold of proprietary technologies over the mobile world, unquote, although it is using Google's Android operating system as its starting point for the project. And finally, 5 fake Apple stores have been found in China. The retail imposters were discovered in Kunming City after an American blogger spotted the shops, complete with staff wearing Apple-branded T-shirts. At least 2 of the stores have now been closed by Chinese officials, but the fight goes on, with reports of other fake stores popping up in Venezuela and Croatia. My head has been scanned, it's been tidied up, and it's busy being printed. While it is, let's talk to Jeremy Gardiner, who's a course director here at Ravensbourne. Jeremy, welcome to Click. Thanks for having us to your place.
You're welcome.
So, 3D printing, is there anything that you can't use to print?
Well, there are certainly lots of different technologies out there. You can boil it down to 2, really. Additive processes and subtractive ones. If you're working with an additive process, it's where you're printing in 3D. In other words, you're building up layers using a liquid or a powder. And the kinds of materials that you can use depend on the subject that you're trying to print. There's a fantastic machine called a Candy Fab printer, which uses granulated sugar. So you can imagine yourself pouring kilos of sugar into a printer and producing something that's very sustainable.
And tasty.
Very tasty, dissolves in the rain. On the other hand, you might be printing with titanium powder. So that would imply that you might be making a hip replacement joint. Your car, your automobile may be old and replacement parts can't be found. Parts can be scanned. They could also be printed with cobalt, for example. Subtractive technologies, it's the reverse essentially. What you're doing is you're taking a solid block and you're removing material from it. So in other words, you might be working with a laser, a lathe, a drill, and more larger projects are using powerful water jets to erode these blocks.
Seems an expensive business at the moment, but there are some cheaper alternatives for the hobbyists, aren't there?
That's true, yeah. I mean, the notion of the factory on the desktop is arriving. It has been for some time, actually. There is a concept called RepRap, which Dr. Adrian Bowyer at Bath University has been working with, which is a machine that replicates itself. So you can log onto the website and learn how to build your own rapid prototyper that will then, in turn, build another one, and another one, and another one.
That's the stuff that nightmares are eventually made of. So how cheap is it to build that build-it-yourself printer?
I I would imagine you could probably do that for a couple of £100.
So you're talking about being able to make a prototype yourself instead of spending a lot of money getting it made, and you're also talking about people halfway around the world being able to print the part they need. What's that going to do to the manufacturing industry?
Well, there you go. It's a revolution in manufacturing.
And a lot of people out of work.
Well, there are a lot of people out of work, but essentially what you're looking at is the ability to do short runs. I mean, the cost of setting up a factory, making a single prototype that you then have to reproduce. With the technologies that we have, for example, at Ravensbourne, you're able to make slight adjustments once you've made those initial prototypes. But there are other effects that has. What about the freight industry? You no longer have to ship a component part from somewhere right across the world. You can print it right here and now where you want it. That's a very green thing to be doing.
I guess as well, if you can scan an object, you can copy an object.
Ah, you're right, yeah. The music industry has been impacted severely by that during the last decade. And yes, what we've got is a situation where a digital file can be shared and copyright infringement can occur. So that's going to be a big issue for the lawyers. That's one that has to be worked out. It's not been resolved yet.
Jeremy, thank you very much for your time. Your thoughts would be very welcome on this. It's a fascinating subject. Email click@bbc.co.uk or tweet us at BBC Click. And later, I'll be popping my head out of that machine. Apparently, one day, all TV will be received over the internet. But there is currently a battle royale raging over how that's going to happen. First, there's the all-singing, all-dancing IPTV, which promises to be the future of television. Then there's Internet TV, which also promises to be the future of television. So how do we work this one out? Well, David Reed reports from France, where at least one of these formats is already making itself at home in the French living room.
The Goury family here, in common with millions of other French households, get their daily dose of telly from IPTV. They get seemingly limitless channels, can hire videos, which saves a trip to the shop, and you can play video games, particularly popular with Jules here. Internet Protocol TV is based on the same technology as the net, but uses a more reliable, managed network. It's caught on in France partly because IPTV has been cleverly bundled together with the internet and telephone for a modest monthly subscription.
In the end, IPTV will replace all other forms of television delivery. That's not strictly just down to us, as there's a global growth that is very strong. We have more than 4 million who use our service in France, and more than 10 million use IPTV services. We have an explosive service that didn't exist 10 years ago, with strong growth.
So is Xavier Niel right? Is this French revolution poised to spread elsewhere? Well, could be, but it all depends on how IPTV copes with the competition from Internet TV. Now, you'll be familiar with services like Hulu or Seesaw, and there's also Internet TV from broadcasters like the BBC's iPlayer or 4 On Demand. While Internet TV is often free, it is not always reliable. That's because the TV show you're watching has to compete with the other traffic on the net. It means that from time to time, it does this. IPTV, on the other hand, comes to you down a managed network. It means it has a sort of dedicated fast lane. No buffering issues, more like this.
It's a matter of the reliability of reception of the programs, and that is a big advantage, but of course it comes with a cost, because if you reserve a seat on a train, you've got to pay an extra cost for that, for reserving that seat on the train. So you have to pay a subscription for IPTV, but not with the open internet, which you get via your normal internet service provider.
Internet TV is looking to consolidate in the future with initiatives like YouView, an online platform for British broadcasters and ISPs. It's worth bearing in mind that advertisers like both IPTV and Internet TV. Both can gather data on viewers, both can deliver targeted ads.
What we do permits us, consumer by consumer, subscriber by subscriber, to deliver targeted advertising. If you live in Saint-Tropez, we can deliver ads for the shopping centre in Saint-Tropez. If you're in Lyon, I'm going to deliver ads relevant to what's around you. We can deliver ads aimed at each subscriber, rather than just everyone.
So there is an important distinction between broadcasting and cablecasting, where you send out all of the programs at the same time and the viewer picks what he wants anonymously, and systems which are based on internet protocol. This is open internet and IPTV. In this case, your address is on the front of the program, so somebody somewhere knows what you're watching all of the time. And this information, if an advertiser or a program company can get it, can be used to help shape advertising, because they know what kind of programs you're watching, for how long, and when you watch them. So this is the fact of life associated with IP delivery services. They are addressed. Somebody knows who is watching, when, and where. And perhaps there are some future ethical issues in this area too. Do we want a society where this happens, or would we prefer actually a broadcast environment where we can watch whenever we want anonymously? That's a question for the future, I'm sure.
It looks like there'll be a role in this new era of television for both IPTV and Internet TV. But once again, with new technology, the downside of incredible choice is creepy intrusion and uninvited others watching what we're watching.
David Reed on the difference between Internet TV and Internet Protocol TV. Got it? Good. Now, one of the UK's leading newspapers publishes a famous rich list containing the names of all those people that we love to hate because they've got too much money. And working for the BBC, I am pretty convinced I will never make it onto that list. But there is a different list published by the same newspaper which people like you and I may stand a chance of featuring on, as long as we're sociable. Kate Russell explains.
I might not have much in my savings account, but there's one place I'm pretty sure of my value: the social web. And at thesociallist.com I can find out for sure by connecting my social networking accounts and letting the website take care of the rest.
You're simply the best. Better than all the rest.
Being at the top of this list isn't just about spamming your networks with drivel. Shocking, I know. It evaluates the interest generated by your posts, giving you a much clearer indication of your worth to the crowd. You connect with Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and Foursquare, which, whilst not being an exhaustive list, probably covers the vast majority of social media activity. Your rank is updated daily, and you have to be in it to win it, as they say. You won't be included if you haven't signed up. So come on, what are you worth? Maybe your social contacts will be more valuable to you than you are to them. That's life, I guess.
That's life.
That's life. And with Hashable.com, you can keep track of all your meaningful Twitter connections with the use of a simple hashtag. For those not familiar with the term, a hashtag is just a keyword definition marked out by a hash symbol at the beginning. So if you're meeting with a friend, you write #with and add it to your tweet, and then Hashable will put it in your records. The site then aggregates all the hashtags used by you and your inner circle, in other words, the people you connect to on the site. So you can see who's doing what, where, and with whom. It might sound a bit trivial to some, or even perhaps a little invasive, but you opt in with the relevant hashtag, and having the history available through the site could come in very handy if your business is all about connections. very musical thumb. Don't believe me? Well, check out Thumb Jam, an iPhone app that puts a powerful MIDI keyboard controller right in the palm of your hand. It's not free, but I think it's worth every penny if you fancy yourself a bit of a digital composer. The idea is that you record loops with different sampled instruments, stacking them on top of each other until you get a composition that you're proud of. Oh, you might want to use your headphones too. Not everybody appreciates musical genius. There are loads of pre-installed samples and you can download more or even record your own. Effects can be added and you can even control them using the phone's gyroscope and accelerometer, like adding pitch bend with tilt or vibrato with a shake. So creating your Thumb Jam is easy, and you can use the copy and paste function to import a session into lots of compatible apps. But if you want to use the Wi-Fi transfer option, you'll find it very buggy. I still can't get it to work, but the makers do assure me that the next update will fix these issues.
Kate Russell. And if you'd like to submit a website or an app for Kate's consideration in the future, email click@bbc.co.uk or tweet us. We are at BBC Click. Now, you'll find all of Kate's links at our website, bbc.co.uk/click. You'll also find a video stream and text of all our reports there, and a link to Click on the radio. And this week, the team gets an inside view on the new project by the musician Björk to find out why her new album is violently appy. Just one more thing to do, and that is to introduce you to my little head. That is the result of the Powder 3D printer. Hello. Not bad, is it? So that's it. From me, Spencer Kelly, and Mini-Me. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Good show, I thought.